What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Thursday, April 17th, 2025, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now it is 15:22 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from here in the US and from overseas. So Trump rejected an Israeli plan to strike Iran's nuclear facilities as soon as this week, according to sources inside of the Trump administration. This was first reported by the New York Times and Newsweek. So Trump rejected Netanyahu's plan to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. According to Newsweek, for months there have been heated discussions in the Trump administration about whether to choose the option of attacking the nuclear facilities or the option of negotiating. Many voices in the administration have expressed their position against an attack, which could drag the U.S. into a wide-ranging war. According to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Trump's Chief of Staff in the White House, Susie Wiles. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard, Vance, Hegseth, and Susie Wiles were against strikes on Iran. And from what I heard, Tulsi Gabbard was the main reason why Trump called off the strikes on Iran this week and early next month, because she was fear-mongering him and saying that it would cause World War III to break out. The final decision was made after Iran announced in a letter to Trump that it agreed to talks, and Gabbard presented a worrying intelligence assessment about the possible escalation following the attack. Mike Walls, the national security advisor, was one of the strongest voices in favor of the attack option, but even he began to sound hesitant. Trump updated Netanyahu on his decision during his visit to the White House last week. According to the New York Times report, the original attack plan was to carry out a similar operation but on a larger scale to the commando raids the Israelis carried out in Syria in September of 2024. Israel planned to carry out a large-scale bombing campaign from the air and then to land commando forces on the ground to severely damage and dismantle the nuclear facilities on the ground. However, it was estimated that the operation that includes commando forces would not be ready before October, and Israel wanted to act quickly. One reason for the rapid action was the desire to carry out the operation before the commander of CENTCOM, General Michael Kurilla, leaves his post. The new plan without commandos proposed that Israel, with U.S. support and assistance, would bomb Iran's nuclear facilities for an entire week while defending against a large-scale missile attack. The goal, as seen by Israel, is to keep Iran more than a year away from developing a nuclear weapon. So this is absolutely huge news. Trump rejected Israel's plan to bomb Iran for an entire week, which, from what I heard, was supposed to take place this week. Now, interestingly, yesterday, we had a whole bunch of Sky Master messages and even a Sky King message, which is extremely rare. These are the highest priority nuclear codes transmitted by U.S. nuclear forces, and they broadcasted them yesterday all afternoon and all evening, interestingly, on the 1-year anniversary of Culinary Night. So something could have been in the works for yesterday, and then it was called off. But we did hear a Sky King message yesterday, which is extremely rare. That's the highest priority nuclear code transmitted by U.S. nuclear forces. The only thing with a higher priority is the emergency war order, which is the actual order from the president to launch. Okay, so a Sky King message takes priority over all other ongoing messages that the U.S. nuclear forces are sending out. But this is absolutely huge news. So we'll have to wait and see what happens going forward. And right now, this afternoon, we have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert again. You can see here a U.S. nuclear war command and control plane over New Mexico. We have 2 B-52 nuclear bombers airborne, one over Louisiana, one over Oklahoma. We also have a lot of reconnaissance planes going down to the Gulf. So here you can see one RC-135 rivet joint that was deployed from Offutt Air Base, home of Strategic Command, and it's going down to the Gulf of America. It's flying over Arkansas right now. So something is brewing over here in the Gulf of America. We keep sending reconnaissance planes down there. And interestingly, we also have an E-3 Sentry AWACS plane going to the Gulf as well. Remember, the Iranians threatened to attack us from the Gulf of America. And then we also have a nuke sniffer plane that went from Offutt Air Base, home of Stratcom, to Travis Air Force Base, which suggests that this nuke sniffer may be going over to the Pacific or is going to be patrolling the Pacific for some time. And here's a closer look at the recon planes going down to the Gulf of America. Okay, one of them from Stratcom headquarters. So this is a strategic level reconnaissance mission down to the Gulf of America. And then the 2 B-52s. And then, interestingly, one of the nuke sniffers did a quick loop over the Grand Canyon, maybe just to do a little bit of sightseeing. Maybe the pilots wanted to do a quick little sightseeing tour over the Grand Canyon. I thought that was pretty funny. And Iran's foreign minister said on Thursday that he had a useful conversation with the IAEA chief, Rafael Grossi, after he visited Tehran on Wednesday. And Iran warned that U.S. talks are at risk of falling apart if the goalposts are moved. Okay, so Iran is saying if the U.S. changes their position on anything, then the second round of talks, which are scheduled to take place in Rome on Saturday, will not take place. Okay, so it seems like Iran is dictating the talks, and we're just kind of going along. And Iran's foreign minister said that he would deliver a written message from Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, to Putin in his meeting with Putin today in Moscow. And this is coming just literally 2 days before the Iranian foreign minister meets with Witkoff and some other U.S. Representatives of the Trump administration in Rome. And the Iranian foreign minister rejected the Trump administration's demand for nuclear dismantlement, saying on Wednesday that Iran's uranium enrichment is not subject to negotiation. So there you have it right there. And Rubio and Witkoff are in Paris today to meet with European leaders to discuss Ukraine and Iran. They're going to be meeting with Emmanuel Macron, so that's pretty interesting. And Britain said they would support the decision by Germany to give Ukraine Taurus missiles and permission to strike high-value targets deep inside of Russia with them. So Britain will support Germany's decision to give Ukraine Taurus missiles and do deep strikes. And we have some interesting news coming out of the White House. Trump apparently had to kick Elon Musk out of a classified intelligence briefing at the Pentagon. Apparently, he got mad and yelled, "What the F is Elon doing here? Make sure he doesn't go there." These were the words Donald Trump allegedly used when he learned that Elon Musk was going to the Pentagon for a briefing on plans for a possible war with China. According to Axios, the U.S. president intervened to prevent this from happening. Wow. And the White House Director of Science and Technology, Michael Kratsios, on Monday suggested the U.S. has technology that can manipulate space and time. The comment came during remarks on the Golden Age of American Innovation at the Endless Frontiers Retreat in Austin, Texas. Kratsios said during the event that American technological developments have stalled compared to the 20th century. A gap lies between our moment and the speed of transformation America experienced mid-century, he said. Progress has slowed. He continued by explaining a recent stagnation in technological development happened by choice. The nation, he argued, is capable of so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space, Kratsios said. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow, and improve productivity. Wow, so that is very, very serious news, confirming what a lot of UFO conspiracy theorists have been saying for many, many years, that the U.S. has anti-gravity devices and even time machines. If he's saying that the U.S. has technology that can manipulate time and space, he's talking about like warp drive engines like in Star Trek, where they can make wormholes and travel across massive distances to other galaxies. Absolutely insane. And the war zone has now managed to confirm via U.S. officials that none of the U.S. Air Force's small stockpile of massive ordnance penetrators have been used against the Houthis, while other high explosive munitions having likely been used instead, such as the GBU-31. So there was some initial reports that came out this week that the U.S. started to use the GBU-57s, or massive ordnance penetrators, against the Houthis, but that is actually not true. And a Russian military transport plane landed at the Engels Air Base in Russia, which is one of the main bomber bases that Russia uses to strike Ukraine. And this suggests that Russia is transporting more missiles to that base so they can do more strikes on Ukraine. And I want to remind you guys that 30-day energy ceasefire is about to expire. The one that Ukraine and Russia agreed to with Trump, that's about to expire. So be ready for an increase in strikes on Ukraine in the coming months. And like I told you guys last fall, there's not going to be any peace in Ukraine. The war is going to continue to escalate, okay? Especially if Ukraine gets Taurus missiles. They're going to start striking deep inside of Russia. They're going to hit the bombers themselves at Engels Air Base. I think we're going to see that this year. I think we're going to see Ukraine take out Russian nuclear bombers with the Taurus missiles, which, by the way, is grounds for Russia to use their nuclear weapons against Ukraine. That's part of Russia's nuclear doctrine, is if a country attacks their nuclear arsenal, even with conventional weapons, then they can retaliate with nuclear weapons. And North Korea on Thursday threatened unspecified retaliation after the U.S. flew long-range strategic bombers over South Korea during training with South Korean warplanes, which North Korea views as practice for an attack against it. The U.S. flew the B-1 bombers Tuesday to train with other U.S. and South Korean fighter jets. South Korea's defense ministry had said the drill was meant to show the two countries' combined deterrence capabilities against North Korea's advancing nuclear program. And California becomes the first state to sue the Trump administration over tariffs. Gavin Newsom officially filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration yesterday, and European Union officials have warned that Serbia could be blocked from joining the EU if its president travels to Moscow for the Russian Victory Day parade on May the 9th. And on April 11th, U.S. nuclear forces conducted an exercise of launching nukes from the air with nuclear war airborne communications relay planes, or the E-6B Mercuries, via the Airborne Launch Control System. So they were flying around and testing that the Airborne Launch Control System works. But that was last week. A lot of people were saying all the Skymaster messages and Sky King messages yesterday were part of an exercise, and that is actually really false. And the White House announced that tariffs on Chinese goods will reach up to 245%. And the Bank of Canada warned that potential U.S. tariffs could trigger a global trade war leading to a deep recession in Canada and inflation rising above 3% by mid-2026. And Ford has told its dealers that it may have to raise prices in May if tariffs continue. And Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni will meet with U.S. President Trump in D.C. today to revive stalled U.S. and EU trade talks after initial negotiations failed to clarify U.S. demands on tariffs. Meloni's personal rapport with Trump, who has called her a wonderful woman and a strong leader, is seen as a key asset. The EU officials hoping she can break the deadlock. And Russian President Vladimir Putin praised Elon Musk, likening him to Sergei Korolev, the mastermind behind the USSR's space achievements. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later on tonight with more breaking news in the live stream. And this weekend, I will not be posting breaking news because it's Easter weekend. Tomorrow is Good Friday. I'll probably either go live tomorrow afternoon or post another update tomorrow afternoon. And then after that, I won't be doing any updates until Monday probably. And I will keep the 24/7 live stream running over the weekend. And I will be checking into the 24/7 live stream throughout the weekend. But most likely, I won't be posting any updates unless obviously something really crazy happens, then I'll go live. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.